Good morning, everyone. I have the great pleasure of wake-up call. So I will do my best to tell my story. When I was talking with Michael and we were going through the interviewing process, it was really Michael that suggested that, and I don't ever do this, so this is kind of odd for me because it'll be talking about my journey. And he suggested that I should tell the story from the windows to the boardroom because that's where I started. And so I added a subtext to it. I want to talk to you today about the importance of experience. So there's a little tagline under that topic, and it's called the theater of experience. So, bear with me. I'll try and correlate this along the way, my journey versus, my collision course with business. So I look at myself as a right brain ambassador in the left brain world of business. I truly believe that the right brain and the left brain need to be exercised in business in order to create experience. And if it's one way or the other, business doesn't last for a long time. It's not sustainable. And that's why I find it so interesting coming from a music background. I grew up in Philadelphia. I majored in music, art, and design my entire education. And I am a failed music major. But the one thing that I learned from the curriculum at Westminster at Princeton was the art of conducting. And I would say that all of you are conductors. And let's use that metaphor for leadership. The important thing about creating results, whether they be financial, whether they be emotional, whether they be engaging your audience, it's all done through the leader's ability to conduct. And we have to do it every day. If you're responsible for managing teams, then you're a conductor. And the conducting metaphor suggests that you can't do it all. There's no conductor that could play every instrument. So what we have to do is understand what those instruments can actually do, separately and collectively. And if we can manage that and orchestrate that, we're making great music. In your restaurants, in retail, whatever business you're in, support, doesn't matter. The leader's art is alignment. And it doesn't matter if you're a small team in the windows, which is where I started on Fifth Avenue and in London, or in the boardroom. That metaphor has stuck with me my entire career. So when I dropped out, I transferred to FIT in New York, and I majored in display and exhibition design. And I fell in love with New York. I fell in love with the idea of the window as a stage. So we're going to talk about theater. So before I was recruited by Best Buy, I had grown up in the department store. Harvey Nichols in London, B. Altman and Company, Tiffany and Company. And I learned the art of storytelling visually with my hands, three-dimensional design, staging, lighting, all of that. And I went on to lead visual merchandising and store design teams in the world of brand presentation for a lot of those New York City department stores. Later on, when I was recruited to Best Buy, I didn't go to Best Buy because of the company. I went to Best Buy because of the leader. And growing up in New York and working in Europe, I knew what great leadership was all about because of how leaders made me feel. They saw something in me that I could not see in myself. And that's the notion of great mentoring. And I'm sure that all of you have your own stories about the people that have made a difference in your life, and that you have made a difference in other people's lives. And that is really the reason why we're all here. We're here to collaborate. We're here to tell our own story. We're here to create an environment of trust and build relationships, whether it's with the audience that you serve or the people that you work with. So I had the good fortune to follow this leader, and the ingredients of great leadership for me was that you're met with a big smile and a lot of curiosity and a lot of inquiry. And that's when you know you've got a leader that really cares. So I met that leader in Minneapolis, and he enabled me to bring everything that I had in my bag of experience and build a capability from ground zero. And he told me one thing, and that is, the culture is going to try and eat you up and spit you out because you're an antibody. And that's what innovation is all about. If you think of it in a biological sensibility, the idea of this big organism that's somewhat successful in the marketplace being injected with new ideas, well, what's the first thing that's going to happen? The organism wants to kill the cell every time. I'm seeing some nods. I think I'm making a connection here. And it probably shows up in meetings, we tried that, didn't work. That's not the way things get done around here. You're never going to fit in. These notions are just too far out of the realm. You really don't understand the business, and so on and so on. How many have heard that language in meetings before? Come on. We all have. We've all been a part of it. And to me, whenever I hear that, I know I'm on to something. And I put my head down and I do the work. Because the one thing that we have to believe in, the most important thing, is why you're in business in the first place. You're in business to serve the customer, period. And if management happens to like it, I think it'll just be a coincidence. What do you think? I'm management. I sit on a board. I sit on private equity boards. That wasn't part of my plan. But actually, I'm furthest away from the customer. And yet, the joy of my work is all about thrilling the customer. So now we just have to do it because we've worked our way up in the leadership ranks. We have to work really hard to stay as close to that as possible. Philosophy. This is what I stand for. I believe that what Howard Schultz said is truth. And that is, culture trumps strategy. The awesome power of culture is unbelievable. It is a force of nature. It can work with you, it can work against you. And there can be competing cultures within organizations. And I have lived through every one of those things. And it's rough, especially if you have a point of view that truly stands on behalf of the customer, and that sometimes you're standing there alone. And that's the time when a leader stands up. Leaders have always got to be open to possibility. There's no such thing as a stupid idea. I mean, let people feel like they're in an environment of trust where they don't feel like they're asking a stupid question. You never know what can happen. Diversity of thought. Well, what is diversity? Diversity is everything that makes us different. Diversity of thought needs to be present at the table when we're trying to create a vision, a purpose, a strategy for our company. And if we're missing any of the voices that it takes to make a business work, if they're not sitting at the table along with the customer, it's flawed. It's flawed. All it takes is one piece missing to bring it down. The leader has got to empower teams. Why? Because you can't do it alone. You have to follow the customer. And in this day and age, following the customer is more difficult than ever before. Why? Because the customer reserves the right to contradict themselves, and the customer is moving constantly. They're rewriting the codes because of the empowerment that they have in the palm of their hand, online, and in the store. All of this can't happen without leadership, without providing clarity, so that the individual that you're responsible for, or individuals in your company, you have to give them something that they can write themselves into. To feel like what I do is not who I am, but what I do goes for a greater good. And we're going to talk about higher purpose. So, we're off. Like I said, it started for me in Philadelphia, and that store over there is a symbol of my father's store in Philadelphia. My father was a haberdasher. My father, when I was a young boy, invited me into the store and taught me the importance of back of the house. How many of you manage restaurants? How many are in retail? How many of you face off with customers every day? Well, the first rule of thumb in a store or a restaurant is the back of the house, because that's where it all happens, right? And my father would not allow me to go onto the selling floor until I knew how the back of the house worked. And I had to work with the tailor. I was taught how to press. I was taught how to rig. I was taught how to put a pair of cuffs on a pair of pants. All of those things I had to do, how to manage the will call system. And then by working that on the weekends, I was able to step onto the selling floor, because my father always said that you can always tell a great operation by its back of the house. Show me a messy back of the house, I'll show you a messy selling floor or a restaurant floor, whatever it may be. Sense of organization, cleanliness, and the art of presentation, because he taught me that the selling floor is really like a stage, and that all of the people that work for the company on that floor are cast members. And they bring that stage to life. They know how to merchandise. They know the art of good manners, the art of good dress, and how to make a customer feel welcomed. Not selling SKUs, but providing a collection of thoughts and ideas that make up a wardrobe. And that's the art of experience. Not thinking about pushing SKUs, but marrying different types of SKUs through the art of inquiry, asking the customer what it is that they want to do with it. What is their lifestyle all about? All of those questions have to happen in order for you to create a composition that matches up to their unmet needs. So it started there, and then I set sail on my journey through design, and I witnessed some incredible people along the way. I noticed that what my father was telling me was all about customer centricity, that the store is an anchor within the community, and that from that we can help build companies through the art of communication, knowing full well that the real enemy that we deal with is complacency, and that the theater of experience is the marriage of these two entities, bringing John D. Rockefeller together with P.T. Barnum. And that we're not selling SKUs, we're selling dreams. And those kinds of thinking create innovation and breakthrough, much like what Frank Gehry did with architecture after he was shunned by the community for many years. So that's just a synopsis of what I put together in an illustrative form to tell you about my story. When I was at FIT, I heard a lecture by a man that is known as the father of display. I'm not going to hold it up, but if I held up a robin's egg blue box, what comes to mind when you see it? Give me some words. Pardon? Yeah? Quality. Right. What was that? Uh-huh. How about romance? How about joy? How about love? How about surprise? All of those things. That goes beyond what they sell. It's the feeling that they give you, the emotional connection. And it's taken them 175 years. And yeah, they've had bumps. They're having one right now. But the brand will live because it's seated in the hearts and in the minds of its customers. This is the man that did it. This was my mentor. His name is Gene Moore. Gene Moore is known as the father of display. Gene Moore turned the windows into an art form. And today's talk is really going back to what Shakespeare said. All the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. And I think it's an interesting way to kind of look at the world because, let's face it, we made all of this stuff up. It's the power of free will and creativity combined with the intelligence and the business acumen that makes brands sustainable. And now brands have got a big problem to solve, especially the ones that have grown up in the physical world, because the whole game has been rewritten. Today, if you're going about building a business, you would think first from the palm of your hand through the mobile device. And that would inform you how to drive people to your site, which in turn can lead, if it's any good, to a physical environment. Because the customer today is the most discriminating customer that is really not loyal. They love to compose. They love to mix things up. It's all about self-actualization. And it's only going to go deeper and deeper and deeper into that a magical hole, if you will. Started with the millennials, now the Generation D, which is on deck, along with Generation Z. And these are generations that don't know the analog world like we do. They grew up in the net generation. So we, as business people, entrepreneurs, and executives in companies, have got to walk in their shoes. Here's a stage, 1955, that Gene Moore created. Da Vinci once said that simplicity is the ultimate seduction. When you think of the simplistic things that you've seen on your journey, you know that it's like a big aha. It's so clean, it's so refreshing. It says so much, and yet it says very little. Why? The designer has got to reconcile and edit and get rid of the stuff that's in the way from telling your story or building your brand. Because everybody's going to want to load up. Everybody's going to want to have input. But the culture of innovation and design is the art of editing. Gene had to do an awful lot of editing to get to this. And it's in a shadow box window on Fifth Avenue. A wooden moon over a broken strand of pearls. The greatest joy in my life is that working with Gene for the last 4 years of his life in a private practice, he was asked to, by my alma mater, if he would like to have a retrospective of his work, and he said on one condition, as long as James designs it. And this is the title shot of the program, Moon Over Pearls. And we featured these old ruins that had embedded in it 13 of Gene's favorite windows over 39 years at Tiffany & Company. And I said, why do you want me to create an environmental atmosphere of ruins? And he said, just look at me. My hands are crippled. I still can sketch, but I can't wait to talk to the man. And I said, Gene, what are you going to say to the man when you see him or her? And he said, I'm going to lift up these crippled hands and I'm going to tell him, bad design. And I said, Gene, you better, be careful. You might piss him off and the gates will close in your face. And he said, no. Because then I'm going to give him a big smile, and I'm going to point right here. Great design. The magic, the whimsy, the humor, housing a $15,000 diamond brooch. That was Gene, juxtaposing fun, humor, whimsy with luxury elements. Gene Moore was the guy that said to Mr. Hoving, who owned Tiffany, that I am going to design glassware for people that can't afford crystal. I am going to design sterling silver collections for people that cannot afford 18 or 24 karat gold. That was the gateway to extraordinary growth for Tiffany. And he picked Robin's Egg Blue. Why? Because it was at the opposite end of the color spectrum from their arch rival, Cartier, blood red. The thinking exercise has got to go beyond what you do. You have to think about something that is filled with a higher purpose of why you're in business in the first place. To create an open platform for people to write themselves in. Another beautiful Tiffany window, gorgeous stage. And I paraphrased this quote, but it was Gene Moore that said it. I will stand up for what I do. If management does not like a window, I say I am sorry. First, I must like it. Second, my public. And if management likes it, it's merely a coincidence. How customer-centric is that? He stood by that principle his entire life and inspired others. Here's another great story. So we've gone from the window, now we're going to the store. This guy's name was Ralph Lifshitz. True story. Grew up in the Bronx. His old man was a tie maker. And all Ralph wanted to do was to make a better tie than his father. And he had an audience with the chief merchant at Bloomingdale's. And that chief merchant looked at his ties back in '66. And he said to him, "So what do you want to do, kid?" And he said, "I just want to show my old man that I can get a main floor showcase on 59th and Lexington in New York." And he said, "Really? Is that it? That's all you want to do? Well, you make a nice tie. I'll give you the showcase. You got to read this book. Come see me in a month." So, young Ralph goes back, reads the book, sees the merchant in a month, and the merchant says, "So now what do you want to do, kid?" These are some of the things that he's done. He said, "I want to sell dreams. I do not design clothes, I design dreams." And when you think about it, somebody made a difference in his life. You're making a difference in other people's lives. Sometimes we don't even know it. I had the good fortune growing up at B. Altman and Company, working with a lady named Dawn Mello. Anybody in here know Dawn Mello? Probably not. She doesn't get enough credit. Dawn Mello was the fashion director at B. Altman and Company, and she became the first president of Bergdorf Goodman, a company that was always run by men. And she did an incredible job there because she brought young designers to Bergdorf's and lifted it up and destroyed the stodginess of it. She found Michael Kors in the windows. From that success, she was approached by Gucci, who was, failing miserably. The brand was dying. It was in the late 80s, and it was always run by the family. And Mauricio Gucci came to her and he said, "Look, I have to do something radical, and you can resurrect my brand." And it took her a while to embrace the fact, but she agreed. She was the first female president, CEO of Gucci. And what she did was found a young designer to go with her to be her creative director to resurrect the brand. And that young designer was an associate designer at Perry Ellis. His name is Tom Ford. Tom Ford has built an empire and stands on the shoulders of great leaders such as Dawn Mello. But these are the people that are behind the stage. They stand behind the curtain that don't get enough credit. So, from the theater of the window, simplistic compositions, something that I did for the launch of Prada. The window, you only have 3 to 5 seconds to get somebody to stop and look and hopefully listen. And our intent as window designers are to pull people into the store. So this was for a launch that became the invitation to pull people into a main floor at Saks Fifth Avenue that was completely transformed into this look and feel. And that's what the art of selling is all about. It suggests, it gets underneath your subconscious, it talks to you, it triggers something that pulls you. It's not about a push, it's about a pull. Then I went into exhibition design on a world stage in Europe and created collections from clay to create forms for mannequins that went into the windows. And this process was one of the most thrilling processes because I burst out of the window and went to a bigger stage. And then it put all of the things that I learned about creating concepts and making those ideas into something real and tangible that could serve a specific audience in the windows around the world. And to teach at the same time the art of where these forms actually come from as they're illustrated in the photographs behind them. Design thinking. I know it's an economic engine of extraordinary growth. And the definition is right here. It's a process, not a formula. It's a logic, but it is open to unexpected discoveries that come from experimentation and making connections between seemingly disconnected ideas. This is the process. In order for us to design and create, we have to walk in the shoes of the audience, and that requires empathy. Understanding the pain points of the audience that you serve, no matter in what arena you're working in. Through the empathy stage, it helps us define what are those pain points and what are the real live problems we're trying to solve. Then and only then can we get into ideation, which brings people together to brainstorm around it, and from there, get in the business of developing prototypes as rapidly as possible without spending a lot of money. Those prototypes can get refined, that's called experimentation, and then you test it. You test it and you verify it, and then you refine it again, and you get it ready for its next phase, pilot, scale. This process has got to hold the company together because following it helps you de-risk, helps you save capital, helps you get to the essence of what problems you're really trying to solve on behalf of the customers that you serve. McLuhan said this in '51 with The Mechanical Bride. I highly recommend this book. It's marketing's perspective from, the father of marketing. Everybody experiences far more than he understands, yet it is experience rather than understanding that influences behavior. These are the things that stick. These are the things that become memorable. Great brands live in a place beyond differentiation. I call them distinctive. I've just shown you two of them. Jobs, when asked what was his purpose, he said, I just want to put a ding in the universe. Doesn't talk about iPods or iPads he wanted to make a mark, and I do believe he did. Now to the theater of the store. Ask yourself these 5 questions. I'll leave them up here for a little bit. Think about it. When you go back, just take a time out. Ask yourself these 5 questions. Put together a workshop with your leadership teams. Post them on the wall. Ask people to just jot down whatever comes to their mind. Why are we in business in the first place? What does the world need most that we are uniquely able to provide? This is the path towards being distinctive. We just can't be incrementally different. You come at me with a price point or a special promotion, and I'll do you one better. That's not distinctive. That's a game of incrementalism that really doesn't open up the pathways to profit. You give away margin, you may build traffic, but it's not sustainable. It's short-lived. What are you willing to sacrifice? Everybody wants to put their stuff in. But what does the leader stand for? What are you willing to give up, yourself personally, as well as some of the things that the company is doing that just get in the way, that end up as legacy issues, that just eat away at your margins and your profitability? Get rid of it. Become a great editor. What matters more than money? People, culture. These are the things that make business grow. Alignment. Are we really all in? Are we in on this mission? Best Buy, I'm going to go through it real quick. This is what I first saw when I went in. And I was frozen in place. They asked me to do an analytical report. I brought back this one slide. I went in front of the founder and the CEO and their direct reports, and I said, congratulations, you're in the business of going out of business. And that's what I was met with, silence. And somebody said, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, you've clogged the aisles with low gross margin merchandise, and I can't find my way through it. I can't even get into the department. And then you have the audacity to hang that sign over the aisle that says, designing a store with you in mind. Now that's a great idea. And I said, I think it's a horrible idea. I think it's pandering, and it's not customer friendly. And I know that by saying this, I'll probably have a short conversation and I'll be on my way back to New York. And I was greeted with a big belly laugh. It was one person. And that's really all I wanted to do. Just get one person to speak up. And that belly laugh and a pound on the table said, finally somebody comes here to tell us the truth. Because I challenged them, you can't be making money doing business like this. And that's when they unveiled, do you know that we do $8 billion a year and we barely made $1 million to the bottom line? And I said, that is just pathetic. Give me that store and I'll create some organization with it. This is the same store. Just rearranging visually to stimulate the audience, to give them pathways so that they can shop. Open up the arteries to your customers. This little kid, when I was, he couldn't have been more than 18, he came up to me, watching me, saying, oh, what is with this dude? Can I help you, sir? Can I get you a shopping cart? And I said, what the hell am I going to do with that? I could hurt myself. So we had to clean it up for the customer. This is the progression that we took at Best Buy to really extract commodities, because it's a low gross margin business, and so are restaurants. That gave us the confidence that if we're going to go to higher gross margin, maybe we should get in the business of private label and make our own goods. At Buffalo Wild Wings, we make our own sauce. And then when you do that, you've got to get into the service area, and that gave us the confidence to acquire Geek Squad. And then from there, well, if you're going to have services and you're going to make your own goods and you're going to put it together with other things to create a lifestyle, well, you got to stage it. You got to create experiences so that people can actually see what this gear actually does. It's too complex. The art of retail and restaurants and any business that faces off with the customer is to make it simple. Show them, don't tell them. And that's going to lead to loyal relationships. And profitability will come because you're going to do it the right way, and the right way will get you the right results. Some schematics of how that store laid out, and along the way, you can see experience zones, little stages, theaters, no different from the universal principles of window design, no different from exhibition design. It's all relative. All of these things work, and it brings people together to express themselves, to stay and play, test and try before they buy, to eliminate all of the technology stress that comes with making a decision. And then we worked with women, and they said, make the environment softer. Make it a cleaner palette. Show me how things look in my home, because I am behind all of those purchases. I am the chief operating officer of the household. Don't let him tell you any differently. And if those speakers and those wires come into my home, I'm going to send them right back to the store. So we took all of that input. I love understanding what people hate. I'm not in the business of just sugarcoating it with what looks good, what do you like. So we're on the path here. I'm at 0. I'm going to fly through these. This is what staging within deep category merchandising looks like. Play zones, Best Buy. Geek Squad, a bar for sharing knowledge and services. New technology, always changing. Stores within a store. Magnolia, we built a home so that the customers could see how all of this stuff works together. But this is what makes it work. And I'm going back to Shakespeare. We're all members of that cast. And without the cast on the stage, there is no theater, there is no experience. Now to the boardroom. Here's where I had to learn how to influence without doing stuff. I had to influence change. I had to change the conversation in the boardroom. I had to introduce innovation to the boardroom, and I was met with nothing but resistance, because the conventional practices of a board, especially in a public space, say, we're here to work for the shareholders. It's not our job to get into the weeds. We shouldn't have innovation in the boardroom. And that argument really kept going, because as soon as I was met with that resistance, I knew I was onto something. And I asked, how do you work for your shareholders? Do you ever have a conversation with them? And the answer was no. So it's a bogus cop-out. My purpose now is to invade the boardrooms and to change the thinking and to change the conversation in the boardroom to make things happen for the customer. And if a board isn't walking in the shoes of the customer, they can't be a better board. They just can't be. So, higher purpose lives beyond what you do. It defines who you are and what you stand for. This is what it looked like. Here's where we are today. The stage is always changing. It's always hitting refresh from to. Now it's more of a stadium feel, because now we've gone from the ultimate guest experience to the ultimate social experience for sports fans. A little bit of higher purpose there. This is our current higher purpose statement. We inspire fun and connect with friends, families, and communities. There's no mention of wings and sauce and beer. You saw this earlier. Firm believer in it. But this is what you're trying to do. You're trying to deliver fun, joy. You're trying to make that stage their own. And then they can play with it. And through watching that behavior, it's an automatic to say to yourself, how do I anticipate what they're going to want next? And that it's always in motion. It never ends. "75 companies out of the Fortune 500 were called design-centric companies. Here's just a showcase of who they are. This is the money slide. They were looked at over a 10-year period, and it's a continuing 10-year, rolling 10-year. This is what happened. Those design-centric companies outperformed the S&P by 228%. We're not just making this nice stuff up. Emotional IQ, along with business IQ, creates stronger economic growth. Ask yourself this when you go back. What's at stake if we don't do anything? What's the real problem we're trying to solve? Who do we want to be in the world? Just like what IMP did in front of the Louvre. The Parisians rebelled against it. They said it was the stain on the face of Paris. Now they love it because it increased traffic by over 10 million visitors a year. Simplicity. Design is everything. That's what Paul Rand said. And we'll go back to the beginning. This is just a little snapshot. Thank you for your patience and your attention on my journey in the world of business using art, design, and emotional engagement as my tools. We live in a theater of experiences in a world that is our stage, and we are merely members of that cast. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.